for small to mid-sized businesses. Our in-studio virtual set shoots start as low as $200. Let our expert get to work on your next video project. Call 251-421-4490 to book your next shoot.
And we're back on the Color Outside the Box podcast with your hostess, Princess Miller, and our very special guest, Miss Ivie Bush of Right Way Christian Daycare. So right before we went to break, we were talking about you setting reasonable expectations with parents and with the kids, letting them know, the rules of the daycare. Mm-hmm. But I want to switch gears, and I want to talk about tantrums. Because last night, I think it was last night, I was in the store, and this kid wanted a certain cereal, and the parents was like, "No, you're not getting that. We're not getting that for you this time." Mm-hmm. And she sat down, fell out in the store hollering. Oh, and no. They stood there and just watched her. And then they was like, "Okay, we're about to leave. We're finna go to the next aisle. You're gonna get up and go with us? You're missing a child." And I was like, really? The stuff that people allow their kids to do. So how do you handle tantrums?
Well, have I ever had any children, when we're talking about daycare, children with tantrum issues? Sometimes a child will act different with someone else other than their parent. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the parents tell me things about their children and how they act once they get home. And I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about, because they don't act that way with me. Mm-hmm. So have I seen them have tantrums? Yes. Depend on their age. Around about the age of 1, they're still babies. So that's pretty much their language. Around 1.5 to almost 2 years old is when I began to teach them that that's not okay. Use your words, even if it's just one word, or point to what you want. So it's all about using language. Until they actually have that vocabulary, that's pretty much how they act out, to let you know what it is that they want at age 1. But around age 1.5 to 2, after I kind of taught you how to use your words, a point to what it is that you want, then yes, I do start to use the timeout method.
Okay. And so have you found the timeout method to be effective? Because, you have some parents out there that are saying timeout is not effective. But as a daycare provider, and you mentioned earlier that you only lay hands for prayer. How do you handle, if you have a child that really acts up, which, I know you said earlier, you have all the good kids. So how do you handle that?
It's all in how the children are raised, or what the parents allow. So when it comes to them, when they come into my home daycare, if it's a child that acts out and they're new, the first few weeks, maybe even the first month or 2, it's pretty much me structuring them to let them know that, no, you can't do that, or you can't do this. It's setting those rules in place depending on their age. I won't necessarily say because they're just all good kids. Children will only do what you allow, once again. So with me, when it comes to the children, my voice is enough. Mm-hmm. Yes, timeout works because they don't like being isolated from everybody else. Mm-hmm. Or if my little timeout bench is not working, then it's the wall, and you have to face the wall, because if they're facing the wall, they can't see what's going on. They can't see what their friends are doing, or, whatever. So they don't like that. I'm telling you, they do not like the wall whatsoever. So therefore, I can just, and I give them chances. Mm-hmm. So it's not like straight to the wall. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to give you so many warnings. Mm-hmm. And it may be a few, depending on what it is that you're doing. And after I've talked to you those few times, then they go to the wall. Mm-hmm. And it works.
Okay. So talk to us about, sometimes people have a misconception about toddlers. They don't think they can be as independent as they can be. And case in point, cleaning up behind themselves. You go to new parents' homes and they got a new toddler and the kid scrolls toys, throughout the house. Mm-hmm. And the parent is the one that gets them up and put them up. But at your daycare, they're taught to clean up behind themselves. So talk to us about some of the other things that you put in place with the toddlers that people may not be aware that toddlers have the ability to do certain things if you teach them early.
All children are teachable. Those first 5 years of their life, their brains are like sponges. Those first 5 years are so important. So it's really important that you teach them as much as you can in those first 5 years. They can always be taught, of course, after 5. But those first 5 years are so important when you have those children. Mm-hmm. With toddlers, if you can teach them how to do bad habits, mm-hmm. like some people think it's cute for the girls that roll their eyes, or do things like that, or say words that they shouldn't say. Mm-hmm. You can teach them more positive things, like how to clean up. By 1.5, if they can pull it out of the toy box, mm-hmm. they know they can learn how to put it back in the toy box. Mm-hmm. It's not hard. It's all about teaching them. And you may have to get in there and assist them, but once you do it so many times, they know it. They learn it. Mm-hmm. And I have some really good children that can clean up pretty good. Mm-hmm. So it's all about how you teach them. By the age of 2, they're cleaning up the playroom on their own. All mm-hmm. they just have to say is clean up time, and they sing their little clean up song, and they have the room organized.
How important is to give affirmation, positive affirmation? I know when my kids were coming up, I made big deals. If they went to the potty, I made a big deal about it. Mm-hmm. If they clean up behind themselves, I made a big deal. Yay, good job. Right. You're a big boy. You're a big mm-hmm. girl. Some parents don't think that they need to do that for children. And I think that plays a part in their self-esteem. But how important as a daycare provider?
It's really important. When it comes to my children, like you said, if they go potty, I reward them the first, when they first start training and pottying. Mm-hmm. Let me just say that. When they first start training and potty, I go in there. If I got to do a silly dance or whatever that makes them happy and makes them feel good about themselves for going pottying, because you're rewarding them, like you're motivating them even more when you let them know that, yeah, good job, you potty. I may give them a sweet treat, mm-hmm. Or whatever for the first few months or so of their pottying. When it comes to cleaning, even when they eat lunch and breakfast, they clear their own table. Mm. I do not clear their table. Mm-hmm. They get up, they throw their plates in the trash, put their forks and spoons in the sink. All of this is important because they're little people, mm-hmm. and they have to be taught. So the sooner you teach them, the better. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if you wait a little too late, mm-hmm. It makes it a little harder to teach them those things.
Yeah, the Bible says bend a tree while it's young.
Right.
So let's talk about, we talked about the importance of cleaning up behind themselves. And I think I want to talk a little bit more about positive affirmation, because we have these parents these days and they can get upset with their kids. I've seen it in the grocery store. The kid wants a candy bar and the mother is like, "No, B, you ain't getting this." And I'm like, what?
No.
What kind of, self-image? And this little kid looked like she was about maybe 3. Mm-hmm. And the mom was cussing at her, 3 years old. The older sister went and got a candy bar, even though she had her own money. Mm-hmm. But she didn't understand that. All she saw was her older sister got a candy bar. I want one too. So positive affirmation, because, self-confidence should be built at home. And a lot of times we have parents that don't, give that positive affirmation. As a daycare provider, do you talk to your parents about positive affirmation?
I do. There's certain things that I'll bring to the parents' attention. Of course, those are their children. Mm-hmm. You know, I can't really tell them how to raise them, how to talk to them when they're in their home. Mm-hmm. But when they're in my home, once you step through those doors, because sometimes you may have a parent that says, they so bad. Mm-hmm. They get on my nerves. Mm-hmm. You know, it's important that you speak positive things over your children, because if they continue to hear that, that's in their ear gate all the time. Mm-hmm. You're bad, you're this, you're that, you just like your dad. You know, it's important to only speak positive things. Mm-hmm. And I'll let the parents know, like, we don't say that word in here. We never say BAD. Mm-hmm. You know, in here, it's certain words we don't even say. Shut up. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I cannot. Oh yeah. Anybody that knows me know I cannot stand to hear that word, be it from an adult, child, whatever. It's so important to be careful what words you use, because they repeat what you say.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. There was a situation where a grandmother was taking care of the grandkid while the parents were at work. Mm-hmm. And the grandmother told the kid, and this is a former daycare student of yours. Mm-hmm. And the grandmother said, "Shut up." And so when the parent came home, it was like, "Well, how was your day?" And they said, "Ooh, grandma cussed." And she said, "What?" And so she asked what he said, what the grandmother said. And he said, she said, "Shut up." And so and this kid was like 5 at the time. So they had been out of your daycare for over a year, but they still remember that that's a bad word. So kudos to you for teaching kids, how to speak positively. Right.
And I have parents that tell me that all the time, that once their children leave and go to school, like a lot of that stuff is still embedded in them. Praying over their food. Some of that stuff is not taught in the home. You would think that it is, but it's not. And those are small things I consider, but I mean, just praying over your food or saying thank you or you're welcome. Those are things that you should be teaching them, and not the negative things. Less negative and more positive things are important.
So what are some of the other things that you teach? Because, the curriculum of a Christian daycare is different from the regular daycares. What are some of the curriculum that you teach your kids? Because they're not just sitting there watching TV or playing all day. You actually have classroom time where they're sitting down at the age of 1, starting at 1, right?
Really from birth.
Okay.
From birth and up. With my babies, I even have them, I shouldn't say birth, I guess. Probably around the age of about 5 months or so, when they kind of start to sit up, they're starting to coo a little bit. It's good to read to them. It's important. They can sit in the class. It's okay if they're cooing. You can read to them just like you're reading to the others. Even though they can't say words yet, but just reading to them is good. It's good for them. Good for their hearing. Also, my curriculum is just basic. It's basic teaching, basic learning of your ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, colors, just your basic shapes. We do have a schedule, and one of the main things, the most important thing that's in our schedule is prayer. We pray every day together. Now, some may say, what does a 1 or, even up to a 5-year-old know about prayer? My children know about prayer. You may not, they take turns with praying. So even if the prayer is just 30 seconds long, that's okay. They prayed. They may have prayed longer than an adult has in that day. So it's really, really important. I always let the parents know, we have prayer, we have praise and worship every day. They love it. They love music time. Our music time is different. Now, yes, they get to listen to the regular children's songs, Baby toddler Shark. Songs, and all that good stuff. But we're going to have praise and worship first. So, and sometimes they'll let me know, TT, because that's what they call me. TT, I need prayer today.